Why is that man still sitting there?
He's on the plaza edge, sir.
I don't care. He's bad for the company image. Get security and take him away, now.
The homeless man heard every word and quietly tightened his grip on the cardboard sign. He wasn't supposed to be there, and none of them knew who he really was. If you believe character shows when no one's watching, tap like, subscribe for powerful stories like this, and tell us where you're watching from in the comments. Because this story is about to change everything. Marcus Whitford stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of his penthouse office on the 42nd floor of Titan Corp headquarters, watching the ant-like figures of his employees streaming in and out of the building below. From this height, they were barely visible, just dark specks moving with purpose across the pristine marble plaza he'd commissioned 5 years ago. That was the problem, wasn't it? He couldn't see them anymore. Not really. Mr. Whitford, the quarterly reports are ready for your review. His assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. Send them to my tablet, Marcus replied, still staring down at the distant figures. At 52, he'd built Titan Corp from a small software startup into a tech empire worth billions. He had 3,000 employees across 5 countries, a portfolio that made investors salivate, and enough money to buy a small island if he wanted to. But lately, something had been gnawing at him. It started 3 months ago when he'd overheard 2 board members joking about employee turnover rates. Who cares if the bottom tier leaves? They're replaceable, one had said, laughing. Marcus had laughed too, uncomfortably. But the comment had lodged itself in his mind like a splinter. Then came the anonymous employee survey results. His head of HR had tried to bury them, but Marcus had demanded to see the raw data. The words had been brutal. Toxic environment. Leadership doesn't care. Just a number here. Only 42% of employees felt valued. 42%. In a company he'd built on innovation and, he'd thought, integrity. Marcus turned from the window and made a decision that would have seemed insane to anyone who knew him. He picked up his phone and called the one person who might understand. Robert, I need your help with something. Something unusual. Robert Chin had been Marcus's college roommate and was now a documentary filmmaker specializing in social experiments. When Marcus explained his plan, there was a long silence on the other end. You want to dress as a homeless person and beg outside your own company, Robert said slowly. For 2 weeks. I need to see who they really are when they think no one's watching, Marcus said. When there's no boss around, no performance review hanging over their heads, I need to see their character. This is either the most enlightened thing you've ever done or the most paranoid, Robert said. Probably both. When do we start? 3 days later, Marcus Whitford ceased to exist. In his place was Henry, a 50-something homeless man with a scraggly gray beard, donated clothes that hung loose on his frame, and a cardboard sign that read, "Anything helps. God bless." Robert had done an exceptional job with the disguise. Colored contacts changed Marcus's distinctive green eyes to a watery blue. Makeup created weathered wrinkles and sun damage. A dental prosthetic gave him a gap-toothed appearance. Even Marcus's own mother wouldn't have recognized him. Remember, Robert said, adjusting the small camera hidden in Marcus's tattered coat. Stay in character. No matter what happens. I'll be monitoring from the van across the street. Marcus nodded and took his position on the sidewalk outside Titan Corp's main entrance. It was 7:30 a.m. on a Monday morning. The first wave of employees would arrive any minute. The cold concrete seeped through his thin pants immediately. Marcus shifted, trying to find a comfortable position, and realized with a jolt that there wasn't one. This was going to be a long day. The employees began arriving at 7:45 a.m. Marcus recognized many of them, though none recognized him. The first person to pass was Derek Thompson, a senior vice president who'd just received a $100,000 bonus. Marcus had personally approved it. "Excuse me, sir," Marcus said in the raspy voice he'd been practicing. "Could you spare some change?" Derek's eyes flicked toward him for a fraction of a second, then away. He pulled out his phone and walked faster, practically jogging through the entrance. He didn't say a word. The next hour brought more of the same. Hundreds of employees streamed past. Some ignored him completely. Others gave him looks of disgust or pity, but kept walking. A few dug in their pockets and tossed coins into his cup without making eye contact, as if he were a parking meter rather than a person. Around 9 a.m., a security guard approached. Marcus recognized him as Bill Hendricks, a 15-year veteran of Titan Corp's security team. "You can't stay here," Bill said, not unkindly but firmly. "This is private property. You need to move along." "Please," Marcus said. "I'm not causing trouble, just asking for a little help." Bill's expression softened slightly. "Look, I don't make the rules. Management's complained about homeless people affecting the company image. You seem like a decent guy, but I have to ask you to leave." Marcus nodded and gathered his things, moving to the public sidewalk about 20 feet away. It was technically city property, so Bill couldn't force him to leave, but the message was clear. Titan Corp didn't want him there. The morning dragged on. Marcus's back ached. His stomach rumbled. He'd skipped breakfast to make the experience authentic, and he was beginning to regret it. The lunch rush started around noon, and the flow of employees reversed as they headed out to nearby restaurants and cafes. That's when he first saw her. She was young, maybe 23 or 24, with dark skin and her hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She wore an intern badge on her lanyard. Marcus didn't recognize her, but that wasn't surprising. He didn't personally know most of the junior staff. She walked past him, stopped, then turned back. "I'm sorry," she said, and her voice was genuinely apologetic. "I don't have any cash on me. Everything's on my card these days." "That's all right, miss," Marcus said. "Thank you for stopping." She hesitated, looking uncomfortable. "Are you hungry? I was about to grab lunch." Before Marcus could respond, another intern called out to her. "Nyla, come on, we're going to be late." "Just a second." She turned back to Marcus. "Wait here, okay? I'll be back." She hurried off before he could tell her not to bother. Marcus watched her go, surprised by the interaction. In his regular life, people constantly offered him things, but it was always transactional. This felt different. Nyla returned 20 minutes later with a paper bag. Inside was a sandwich, an apple, and a bottle of water. "It's turkey and Swiss," she said, handing it to him. "I hope that's okay. I didn't know if you had any dietary restrictions." Marcus stared at the bag, unexpectedly moved. "This is very kind of you." She smiled, and it reached her eyes. "My mom always said we're supposed to look out for each other. Have a good day." "Okay?" As she walked away, Marcus opened the sandwich. It was from the deli across the street. Nothing fancy, but it might have been the best meal he'd had in years. Not because of the taste, but because of what it represented. The afternoon brought more indifference, more averted eyes, more people stepping around him as if he were an obstacle rather than a human being. But Marcus kept watching, kept learning. Day 2 was colder. Marcus arrived at 7 a.m., claiming his spot before the morning rush. Nyla showed up around 8:30, and when she saw him, her face lit up with recognition. "You're back," she said, stopping beside him. "How are you doing?" "Been better, been worse," Marcus said truthfully. Every muscle in his body ached from sleeping on Robert's office couch. They'd agreed Marcus should experience some discomfort to make the experiment authentic. "I brought you a granola bar," Nyla said, pulling it from her bag. "I know it's not much, but I thought you might be hungry." "You didn't have to do that." "I know," she said simply, "but I wanted to." After she left, Marcus sat there processing the interaction. This young woman, who probably made $30,000 a year as an intern, was giving away her own food. Meanwhile, executives making 10 times that amount couldn't spare a glance. Day 3 brought rain. Cold, miserable rain that soaked through Marcus's inadequate coat within minutes. Most employees rushed past even faster, using the weather as an excuse not to stop. Marcus was shivering uncontrollably when a figure approached from an unexpected direction. It was a janitor, judging by the uniform. He was Latino, probably in his 40s, with kind eyes and calloused hands. Marcus had seen him before but didn't know his name. "Here," the man said, pressing something into Marcus's hand. It was a $20 bill. "Get yourself somewhere warm. Maybe a hot meal." Marcus looked at the money, then at the man. The uniform was worn but clean. The shoes were cheap, probably from a discount store. This was someone who didn't have much to spare. "I can't take this," Marcus said. "Yes, you can," the man said firmly. "I'm Miguel. I've been where you are, brother. 10 years ago, I was sleeping in my car, trying to find work. People helped me. Now I help when I can. It's how the world's supposed to work." He patted Marcus's shoulder and walked into the building before Marcus could protest further. Marcus stared at the $20 bill, feeling something crack open in his chest. The days blurred together. Marcus learned things he'd never known from his penthouse office. He learned that the junior employees often ate instant noodles for lunch to save money. He learned that they complained about the expensive coffee in the building cafeteria, joking that it cost more than their hourly wage. He learned their dreams, their struggles, their kindness. Nyla came by every single day. Sometimes she brought food, sometimes just conversation. She told him about her degree in computer science, her hope of landing a full-time position at Titan Corp, her student loans that kept her up at night. "This company could change my life," she said on day 8. "If I could just get a real job here, not just an internship. But it's so competitive. Sometimes I feel invisible." Marcus wanted to tell her that he saw her, that he'd never seen anyone more clearly. But he remained in character. Miguel stopped by regularly too. Sometimes just to chat, sometimes to bring coffee or a breakfast sandwich. Marcus learned that Miguel sent half his paycheck to his family in Honduras, that he worked second shift at a warehouse on weekends. That, despite having so little, he still found ways to give. But not everyone was kind. Marcus watched executives he'd personally hired step over him, complain about him, even call him disgusting within earshot. He watched Jennifer Walsh, a senior director who'd given a presentation on corporate social responsibility just last month, literally step on his outstretched hand as she rushed past, talking on her phone about her vacation to Bali. On day 10, something shifted. Marcus was in his usual spot when he heard raised voices. Bill, the security guard, was talking to someone on his radio. "Yes, sir. I understand. I'll take care of it." Bill walked over to Marcus with an apologetic expression. "Hey, Henry. I've got orders from upstairs. The executive team doesn't want you here anymore. They say you're bad for business. I have to ask you to leave, and this time, you can't come back." "Who gave the order?" Marcus asked. "Does it matter? Look, between you and me, I think it's wrong. But I need this job. I've got a family. I'm sorry." Marcus stood slowly, gathering his things. He was about to leave when he heard a voice behind him. "Wait!" It was Nyla, running across the plaza. Behind her were Miguel and about a dozen other employees, mostly from the lower levels of the company. "What's going on?" Nyla demanded, slightly out of breath. "He's being asked to leave," Bill said uncomfortably. "Management's orders." "That's not right," Miguel said. "This is a public sidewalk. They can't do that." "Actually," Bill said, "they can. This whole plaza is company property." Nyla looked stricken. She turned to Marcus. "Where will you go?" Marcus shrugged, staying in character. "I'll find somewhere." "No," Nyla said decisively. She turned to the group behind her. "We were going to wait until tomorrow, but let's do it now." She pulled out her phone and started typing furiously. Within minutes, several employees were approaching with bags and packages. They'd organized a collection for him. "It's not much," Nyla said, handing him a duffel bag. "But there's some warm clothes, non-perishable food, a sleeping bag, and this." She pressed an envelope into his hand. "We took up a collection. It's about $800. Some people gave a lot, some gave a little. We wanted to help." Marcus felt tears threatening to break through his disguise. He couldn't speak. Miguel stepped forward. "There's also a list of shelters and resources in there. And my phone number. You call me if you need anything, understand? Anything at all." "Why?" Marcus managed to ask. "Why would you do this for me?" Nyla smiled, that same genuine smile from the first day. "Because you're a person, because everyone deserves kindness, because that's what human beings are supposed to do for each other." Marcus looked at the group gathered around him. Junior employees, interns, janitors, maintenance workers, the people at the bottom of his company's hierarchy, giving what little they had to a stranger. "Thank you," he whispered. "You have no idea what this means to me." After they dispersed, Marcus sat in Robert's van, still holding the duffel bag and envelope. Robert had captured everything on camera. "Well?" Robert asked. "What are you going to do now?" Marcus wiped his eyes. "I'm going to fix this. All of it." The following Monday, Marcus Whitford returned to his office without the disguise. He sent out a company-wide email announcing a mandatory all-hands meeting at 2 p.m. Attendance was not optional. The auditorium was packed. Employees whispered nervously. Mandatory all-hands meetings usually meant layoffs or restructuring. Marcus walked onto the stage in a simple suit. No tie. "2 weeks ago," he began, "I did something unusual. I wanted to know who you really are when you think no one important is watching. So I disguised myself as a homeless man and sat outside this building." The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Marcus held up his hand for quiet. "I'm going to show you what I saw." For the next 30 minutes, the screens displayed footage from Robert's cameras, the executives walking past without a glance, the cruel comments, the complaints to security, and then the moments of kindness. Nyla's daily visits, Miguel's $20, the organized collection. When the footage ended, the auditorium was silent. "I learned something these past 2 weeks," Marcus said. "I learned that the people with the least gave the most. I learned that titles and salaries don't determine character. And I learned that I've failed you. I've created a culture where empathy is seen as weakness, where the bottom line matters more than the people who make it possible." He paused, letting the words sink in. "Effective immediately, things are going to change. First, Nyla Okonkwo and Miguel Reyes, would you please stand?" In the crowd, Nyla and Miguel rose uncertainly. "Nyla, you're being offered a full-time position as a junior developer, with a starting salary of $75,000 and full benefits. Miguel, you're being promoted to facility supervisor, with a 50% salary increase and a seat on our new employee experience committee." Both of them looked stunned. Around the auditorium, people began to applaud. "Second," Marcus continued, "we're implementing a living wage policy. No one who works for Titan Corp, in any capacity, will make less than $25 an hour. Third, we're establishing a corporate giving program where the company matches employee charitable donations dollar for dollar. And fourth, we're creating an employee assistance fund for those facing hardship." He looked out at the sea of faces, some skeptical, some hopeful. "But the biggest change has to be cultural. I'm instituting mandatory empathy training for all management, starting with the executive team. Those who can't or won't embrace these values will be asked to leave. We're also implementing a servant leadership model where managers are evaluated on how well they support their teams, not just their results." Marcus took a breath. "Some of you may think this is naive or bad for business, but I believe a company that takes care of its people will always outperform one that doesn't. We're going to prove it." He gestured to the screens, which now showed the faces of the employees who'd helped him. "These people reminded me what Titan Corp was supposed to be about. Innovation? Yes. Success? Yes. But also humanity. If we can't take care of each other, what's the point of any of it?" The applause started slowly, then built to a roar. Not everyone was clapping, Marcus noted. Several executives sat with their arms crossed, faces stormy. That was fine. They'd either adapt or leave. After the meeting, Marcus returned to his office to find Nyla waiting outside. "Mr. Whitford," she said nervously, "I don't know what to say. Thank you doesn't seem like enough." "You don't need to thank me," Marcus said. "I should be thanking you, you and Miguel and everyone else who stopped. You reminded me why I started this company." "Can I ask you something?" Nyla said. "Why did you really do it? The disguise, I mean." Marcus thought about how to answer. "Because I was afraid I'd lost touch with what matters. And I was right. But you helped me find my way back." 6 months later, Titan Corp's employee satisfaction scores had jumped to 87%. Turnover had dropped by 40%. And somehow, despite the increased costs of the new policies, profitability had actually increased. Turns out happy employees work harder, stay longer, and innovate more. Marcus still thought about those 2 weeks regularly. He'd had the duffel bag and envelope framed in his office, along with a photo from the collection day. It reminded him that leadership isn't about the view from the top floor. It's about staying connected to the people who make everything possible. He'd learned that character reveals itself not in boardrooms or performance reviews, but in small moments of choice. When someone has nothing to gain from kindness, and they choose it anyway, that's where you find out who people really are. And he'd learned that sometimes, the most powerful thing a leader can do is stop leading long enough to remember what it means to be human. Nyla stopped by his office one evening, 6 months after her promotion. She was working late, as usual, driven by the same dedication she'd shown to a stranger on the street. "You changed my life," she said simply. Marcus shook his head. "No, Nyla, you changed mine. I was just smart enough to pay attention." As she left, Marcus turned back to the window, looking down at the plaza below. But this time, he wasn't seeing ants. He was seeing people. Individuals with stories, struggles, dreams, and the capacity for extraordinary kindness. And that made all the difference.